Hi again, everyone. Gary Digital Williams here on the Boxing on the Beltway Podcast Network. And the Boxing on the Beltway Podcast Network can be heard as always on Spreaker.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher. We're on Podcast Addict. We're on Spotify. We're on TuneIn. And we're on Google Podcasts. You can also hear it on YouTube, my Gary Digital Williams page. Also, you have Twitter. My Twitter handle is Digital25, so you can hear it there. And so you also hear it on my Facebook page, on the Boxing on the Beltway Podcast page on Facebook. So a lot of places where you can hear this podcast. And this week, we have a little bit of news this week. We have a result of a bout that took place this past Saturday in Uncasville, Connecticut at Mohegan Sun Casino. Also, we have a little bit of a rumor situation. Nothing I can say for certain, but there could be a change of plans, possibly, for one of our Beltway boxers who is actually on the United States Olympic team. So we'll see what happens there. And I'm going to pay tribute this week to the very first Beltway world champion that I ever had the honor to cover. And he has actually become a pretty good friend of mine these days. I've talked to him more now than I did when he was boxing, but he had an outstanding career. And I really do believe that he should be in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. And we'll see. We'll kind of lay that argument out for you this week during this podcast. Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network, brought to you as always by Real Time Pain Relief. From boxers to ballerinas, for shoulder pain and muscle strain, everything between, Boxing Along the Beltway recommends Real Time Pain Relief, the natural, plant-based, safe, fast, and effective ointment. You go to freepainoffer.com, buy $10 worth of Real Time Pain Relief. You get a free $10 tube of Real Time Pain Relief, and you can also try Big George Foreman's Knockout Formula for Real Time Pain Relief. Rub it on, the pain is gone in real time. And by DeborahSpears.com. She has great weight loss tips and great jewelry, all at Deborah, Debra Spears.com. Well, again, very light schedule this week, and just one event that took place this past Saturday at Mohegan Sun Casino in Uncasville, Connecticut. And actually, it's been a tough couple of weeks for the Fox brothers. Last week, of course, Michael, the Professor Fox, he lost a 10-round unanimous decision to Lucas Santamaria. That bout took place last week. And this week in Mohegan Sun, the older brother, Alantez Fox, the Upper Marlboro, Maryland super middleweight, his bout ended in a third round no contest against the Wild Hurricane Habib Ahmed of Accra, Ghana. No word who got affected by this, but the two clashed heads during the third round and the bout was stopped. And I'm kind of trying to visualize that in my head because, again, Fox being so tall, 6'5", I don't know how tall Ahmed is. I've never seen him before, but I'm curious to know how they clashed heads unless Fox kind of bent over and they clashed heads. That could have been the case, but no word of who was directly affected by the clash, who had the injury after the clash, and the bout just ended in a no contest. So both fighters' records remain the same. Fox is still 26-2-1, 12 KOs. Ahmed is 27-1-1, 18 KOs. So tough break again for the Fox brothers. No wins there, one loss, and one no contest there. Now, scheduled this past week, actually this week, Ashton Sykes was scheduled to be in a 6-round bout in Michigan, but I haven't seen any record of it. I don't think it ever happened. I checked Ashton Sykes' Facebook page before I went on the air today, and there was no mention of it, so I don't think the bout happened. Coming Saturday, August 22nd, St. Pleasant, Maryland, super featherweight James Too Slick Early. He'll be in that 6-round contest against Curtis Hard Knocks Johnson, New Orleans, Louisiana, by way of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. That bout is for the vacant American Boxing Federation Atlantic super featherweight title. It's going to take place at the Bonita Springs Elks Lodge in Bonita Springs, Florida. So, again, all bouts that we talk about are definitely subject to cancellation due to COVID and COVID-19. So anything we say is really kind of scheduled until it happens, basically, in all honesty. So we'll see what happens as we go through. Now, coming up this next week, the weekend of August 28th, 29th, scheduled to have Upper Marlboro, Maryland super featherweight Lamont Rose Jr. We talked about his bout, his 10-round bout at the Fantasy Springs Casino in Indio, California. That bout's scheduled to be streamed on DAZN. Okay, and then on Saturday, August 29th, Frederick, Maryland cruiserweight Larry Hitman Pryor, he's got to be in a 4-round bout in Deary, New Hampshire, at the Sports Zone there. So that's all that, again, scheduled to change without notice or due to COVID-19. So we'll just see what happens and play it by ear. And again, we have cards that are scheduled, and again, the emphasis is scheduled to take place in Virginia in September. Now, I don't see how those are going to happen because, again, Virginia, out of everybody in the Beltway region, has had a big spike in COVID-19 cases. So I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. We have to wait and see. Also, there is an amateur card that's scheduled to take place at the Main Street Boxing Gym in Salisbury, Maryland on August 22nd, this coming Saturday. Deshaun Chase is scheduled to be in that card, and a few others. So that's scheduled to be there. It's going to be by invitation only. So it's not like you can go as a fan to go there. If you don't have an invitation, you cannot go. But it is a amateur card that's going to take place at the Main Street Boxing Gym. My good friend, DC Boxing Hall of Famer Hal Chernoff, of course, runs that gym. And that'll be in Salisbury, Maryland at the Main Street Gym there on Saturday, August the 22nd. Now, back in April, we talked about how Keyshawn Davis out of Alexandria by way of Norfolk, Virginia, is really the biggest hope possibly that the United States has for winning a gold medal in Tokyo scheduled next year. It would have been actually during this time period as we talked to you. The Olympics would have been here because COVID-19 saw it differently. But back in April, Keyshawn Davis made a decision that he was going to stick with the amateurs and not turn pro. And to kind of piggyback on that, in May, he went on a podcast and said basically the same thing. He was going to do that. In fact, he gotten some advice from Shakur Stevenson, the silver medalist, who is now a world champion. And he said stick with the amateurs. And so... And Shakur and Keyshawn are training partners. They train under K. Caroma in Virginia. And so there was a thought that he was going to stick with the amateurs and try for the gold. And again, he is probably the leading candidate to try to win a gold medal should he, of course, qualify. Now, fast forward to a couple weeks, I get some emails and get some notices that Keyshawn Davis, has not been at the last two training camps for the U.S. Olympic team. And somebody has been in his weight class in his place. I think it's 138 pounds. And so I don't know what's going on. I really don't. I don't know whether or not he's changed his mind and decided to go pro, or whether or not he's just training on his own and not going with the Olympic team. I don't know what's happening here. So we have to wait and see what's going on with that. But there's a question now whether or not Keyshawn Davis out of Alexandria, Virginia, who won a world championship and was one of the highest last champion to win a medal in the world championships out of the Beltway. Whether or not he's going to do it, I don't know. We'll see. We just have to wait and see. Hopefully get some more word on that in the not too distant future. Now, our tribute today. I'm very happy to give this tribute because this guy was the first Beltway boxer who became a world champion that I had a chance to cover. Now, I did not cover Sugar Ray Leonard. By the time he was world champion, I was basically in my teens at the time. And although he kind of bridged my time as a boxer in covering boxing during that time period, I never got to cover him as a world champion. But Simon Brown, who we're going to talk about this week, and he was my first world champion. Now, Simon is interesting. Simon Brown, again, was the first descendant, so to speak, of what Sugar Ray Leonard did. He was the first, one of the first big, recipients and followers of what Sugar Ray Leonard did in this area. Now, Simon Brown was originally from Clarendon, Jamaica, but moved here to the D.C. area. As a matter of fact, my father, Russell Williams, who was a teacher at Lincoln, what was then known as Lincoln Junior High School, now Lincoln, I think it's Lincoln Middle, Lincoln Intermediate School, taught him in middle school. And so he'd been here for a while. He had a great amateur record, 63-2, as an amateur. Now, Simon's nickname was Mantequilla. Now, in the United States culture, in American culture in boxing, the nickname Sugar was very sacred, and very few boxers could hold up that name with pride. Of course, the great Sugar Ray Robinson was the first one to really do it. Then came Sugar Ray Seals. Sugar Ray Seals won a gold medal in 1972 in the Olympics, and he would have been probably a very good pro, not a world champion, but he had eye issues. In fact, he lost an eye, ended up losing an eye, so he held it. Then, of course, came Sugar Ray Leonard, and he, of course, took it to new heights. No question about that. 6-time world champion, gold medalist, and really set the boxing world on fire during his time period. I mean, he revolutionized the boxing game, because before then, boxing was really, really a heavyweight based sport. Sugar Ray Leonard came along in the '76 Olympics with his charisma and his ability, his speed, and he really changed the game as far as boxing was concerned. And then, of course, the latter one to do was Sugar Shane Mosley, who had an outstanding career as well. So in the American culture, Sugar was a very sacred name. It's kind of like I attribute to the late great Dusty Rhodes, who talked about his nickname, the American Dream, the wrestler, and he said, no one's an American Dream so-and-so because it's sacred. Well, Sugar was sacred in American boxing cult circles because very few could hold it. The same can hold true for the nickname Mantequilla. Now, for those who don't know Spanish, Mantequilla in Spanish means butter, which basically means you are smooth as butter. And really only one other boxer ever held that name. He was a tremendous boxer, middleweight champion by the name of Jose Napoles. And he was Jose Mantequilla Napoles. He was an outstanding boxer. And the only other boxer that I know of that has held the name Mantequilla and did it with pride and with reverence and with talent and making history on his own was Simon Mantequilla Brown. Now, I assume he got that nickname from his trainer that time, Pepe Correa, Jose Pepe Correa of the Latin Connection. And that's where Simon trained for many years. And since Jose Pepe Correa was Latino, I assume he gave that nickname to Mantequilla. I don't know exactly how it happened, but I believe that's probably how it happened. But Simon Brown had an outstanding career, no question about that. And it started for him on February 16th, 1982, at the Tropicana Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. He scored a four-round victory over Ricky Williams. Now, the first 10 bouts for Simon Brown were in Atlantic City. Most of them at the Tropicana Hotel. There's one bout he had at the Sands Casino Hotel in Atlantic City. But the majority of his bouts at that time were in Atlantic City. His first bout in the Beltway, and his first for a long time, was on December 14, 1982, when he scored a first-round knockout over Ruby Ortiz at the Prince George's Community College Novak Fieldhouse in Largo, Maryland. Now, that was actually Simon's first 8-round bout already after just 11 bouts, after 10 previous bouts. He returned to Atlantic City for a number of times, again Atlantic City about 5 or 6 more times, and then on June 2nd, 1984, he scored a 10-round unanimous decision over Clayton Hires at the D.C. Armory in Washington, D.C. Back to Atlantic City with Jerome Johnson, 10-round unanimous decision in August 1994. Then in April of 85, he scored an 8-round TKO over Martin Rojas in Atlantic City. He'd come back to the Beltway on July 23rd, 1985 at the Convention Center, scored a first-round knockout over Randy Mitchum. And then he got his first big bout. His first big bout that would put him on the map if he would win. It was on November 22nd, 1985 at Sands Casino Hotel in Atlantic City, and he fought Marlon Starling. And that was for the USBA welterweight title. Unfortunately, Brown would lose a 12-round split decision. Now, back in those days, the regional title bouts were 12 rounds. The championship bouts were 15 rounds. And so Marlon Starling and Brown fought to a 12-round decision, and Marlon Starling won the bout by 12-round split decision. Starling, Brown got one decision on the cards, 116-112. The other two went to Starling, 116-112 and 115-113. So that was Simon Brown's first professional loss. He would come right back. He'd win 3 more bouts. Back at the Washington Convention Center, he'd score a 7-round TKO over Kevin Howard, a guy who once fought Sugar Ray Leonard, on March 21st, 1986. Then on June 8th, 1986, Simon would travel to Toronto, Ontario, Canada, the CNE Coliseum, and he would score a 3rd-round TKO over Sean O'Sullivan, who was a pretty good boxer back in those days. And then Simon would return home to his native Jamaica in Kingston and score a 6-round TKO over Dexter Smith on September 25th, 1987. And that would lead to Simon Brown's first world title shot. It will be a bout that took place on April 23rd, 1988 in Berck-sur-Mer, France. And the bout will be shown on CBS Sports. I'll never forget it because I actually watched this bout live as it happened. It was for the IBF World Welterweight title. The champion was it was a vacant title, And Simon Brown would take on Tyrone Trice. Great bout. Oh, this bout was superb. And Simon Brown would win by 14th round TKO. A tremendous bout. Oh, that bout was unbelievable. I'll never forget that bout. And that was Simon Brown's first world title victory against Tyrone Trice in April of 1988. Then in July of 1988, July 16th, he'd go back to Kingston and defend his title against Jorge Vaca. It was a national arena in Kingston, Jamaica, and Brown would score a 3rd-round TKO. He would defend his title for the second time against Mario Martelli on October 14th, 1988 in Lausanne, France. He'd win a 12-round unanimous decision in that bout. Then he traveled to Hungary, Budapest, Hungary, on February 18th, 1989, and that was a 3rd-round knockout win over Jorge Masonet in Budapest, Hungary. Great bout there. Then I got a chance to see Brown back on TV. I missed this bout live. It was on April 27, 1989. I definitely saw it on TV. And by this time, Brown had moved from Pepe Correa to Teddy Atlas as trainer. And probably done a few bouts prior to that, but he definitely had gone back to him at that time. And he'd take on Al Long, Bumblebee Long. And that was at the D.C. Army on April 27, 1989. And that would be shown on USA on Tuesday Night Fights. And Brown would score a 7th-round knockout in that bout. Great bout there. Then on September 20th, 1989, Brown would defend his title for the 6th time against Bobby Joe Young. That was in Rochester, New York at the War Memorial Auditorium. And Brown would score a 2nd-round knockout. So he was really dominating the welterweight division at that time. By that time, I believe Marlon Starling may have been a WBA champion at that time. He would lose his title to Mark Breland. And there'll be another champion that we'll talk about in just a moment. Then on November 9th, 1989, in Springfield, Massachusetts, Springfield Civic Center, Brown would defend his title against Luis Santana and win a 12-round unanimous decision. Then came April 1st, 1990. And this is where my story with Simon Brown truly begins. Because it was the first world championship bout I ever covered. It took place at the D.C. Armory on April 1st, 1990, and it would be a rematch against Tyrone Trice. And the excitement I felt going into this bout was just totally, it was over my head. I couldn't believe it. I was at a world title bout at first time as a journalist. I wrote for a small paper called the Superstar News. I was in there, press credentials, and I was in there to watch a world championship and a world champion bout featuring a boxer from my hometown. It was tremendous. It was a great, great day. The bout was on ABC. If memory serves me correct, it was on ABC Sports. And Tyrone Trice would lose to Brown by 10th round TKO. Tremendous bout there. Another great bout. No question about that. And that day meant a lot for me for a number of different reasons as well. Again, it was the first world championship, and getting a chance to talk to Simon really for the first time. It was a great experience. No question about that. And also, it was my first meeting, and this is sort of a side note to this, but it was the first meeting I had with the legendary Burt Randolph Sugar. A mutual friend of ours, Bonnie Hart Johnson, Dr. Avon Hart Johnson. I knew her as Bonnie because I worked with her for many years. Both in Pepco and in boxing as well. But she knew a lot of people in boxing. One of the people she knew was Burt Randolph Sugar. And my father and I actually took Burt Sugar to his hotel that day. Now, my first meeting with the legendary Burt Randolph Sugar, and I had to really kind of explain. Although my dad kind of knew who he was, I had to make sure he knew how big this moment was for me personally. No question about it. But anyway, make a long story short, Burt Sugar was one of the funniest people I've ever met. He and I became really good friends over the years to his passing. He's a native Washingtonian, for those who don't know. And the funny thing that took place within this ride going to his hotel was on the radio that day. There was a report, I believe it was on our all news channel, WTOP, here in Washington. And it was about a magician who did magic tricks on the radio. And when Sugar heard this, Burt heard this, it boggled his mind. He just started making joke after joke on it. It was just incredible. It was so much fun. It was a great day for me personally. And of course, Simon Brown winning the world championship was a big part of that. So that was on April 1st, 1990. He'd have a non-title bout against Ozzie O'Neill on December 8th, 1990 in Atlantic City, and he would knock out O'Neill in the first round. Then came a very big bout for Beltway boxing in general. And it's a big shame that this bout didn't take place here in D.C. It took place in Las Vegas. But while Simon Brown was dominating the IBF and becoming one of the best world champions in the world at that time, another person was dominating the WBC. He was WBC welterweight champion. His name, the Thin Man, Maurice Blocker. Now, the connection, for those who don't know, and a lot of people in this area do know this, but for those who are from not of that area and don't know this, Simon Brown and Maurice Blocker were the best of friends. They trained together and they were just incredible friends for each other. But they both held a world title. And it came down to these two unifying the world championship in March of 1991, March 18th, 1991, and took place at the Mirage Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. And it was a brutal bout, no question about it. And Simon Brown won the bout by 10th round TKO. And he would hold both the IBF and WBC World Championships. It was a great bout. They remained friends afterwards. I don't know how much they've talked since then. I got to ask Simon since that time. One day we'll do a tribute to Maurice Blocker. His career was very interesting as well. Didn't have the overall pageantry that Simon Brown's had, but still had a really great career. He was a world champion. His loss, and we'll talk more about this when we do the tribute to him, his loss set the career in motion for one of the greats of all time, Felix Trinidad. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later on. But it was a great bout. No question about that. Now, Simon would give up the IBF welterweight title in May of 1991, and he did it for a very good reason. The IBF at that time recognized South African boxers during the time of apartheid. The brutal way of living that they had in South Africa for many, many years until the presidency of Nelson Mandela. But because of that, Brown vacated the IBF title back in May of 1991, shortly after the bout against Maurice Blocker. So he only held the WBC title at that time. Just beautiful. And you can tell that Simon had convictions and principles, which I've always known, but he always had those principles. He would defend the WBC welterweight title against another legendary champion, James Buddy McGirt. That was on November 29, 1981. And McGirt would defeat Brown by 12-round unanimous decision. McGirt was really at the top of his game at that time. It was in Las Vegas, Mirage Hotel and Casino. Jerry Roth had the bout 117-110. Dalby Shirley had it 119-108. Ray Solis had it 117-110. So again, he pretty much dominated that particular bout against Simon Brown that night. So Simon Brown at that point in his career was thought of, after he lost the title to McGirt, heading on the downside of his career. So he really kind of took bouts to kind of pick himself back up. He would knock out Melvin Wynn in Cleveland, Ohio on June 26, 1992 in the second round. Win a 10-round unanimous decision over a very tough Anthony Ivory. I've seen Anthony Ivory many times. He was a very tough boxer. He won a 10, that was in Las Vegas in August of 1992. In April of 1993, he would win a 10-round points decision over Carlton Haywood. That was at the Pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee. On August 6, 1993, Brown would defeat Terry Acker in the second round in Bayamon, Puerto Rico. And then on October 23rd, 1993, he would knock out Verdell Smith in the third round in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So these are bouts that kind of kept Brown busy, kind of kept him in shape, but no one thought that it would really help him get back to being a world champion. Boy, are we wrong. On December 18th, 1993, Simon Brown would walk in the ring in Puebla, Mexico, and face truly one of the greats of the game, Hall of Fame in his own right, terrible Terry Norris. And the knockout that took place by Simon Brown in the fourth round was truly one of the most surprising and shocking, maybe in the recent history of boxing. Simon Brown would knock out Terry Norris at 106 of the fourth round and win the WBC super welterweight titles. He moved up in weight and would win a super middleweight title. Now, that knockout was the upset of the year as selected by Ring Magazine in 1993. It was a major fight. It was a tremendous fight. No question about that. And it would be a game changer for Simon Brown. He would be back on top, and he'd be one of the greatest of all time once again. He would knock out, he scored a 12-round majority decision against Troy Waters in January of 1994. And then on May 7th, 1994, he'd walk into the ring in, I believe it was Vegas, and he'd walk in a rematch against Terry Norris, and things would be so different, and Terry Norris would knock out Simon Brown and regain the WBC Super Middleweight Championship. And that would be a tremendous loss for him, but it was a very, very big time for him at that time. He would win that title, and that would pretty much be the end of Simon's time as a world champion. He tried to get other things. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But it was really a tough time for him. Then on September 12, 1994 in Las Vegas, Brown would win a 10-round unanimous decision over Nestor Maciel. He'd go to Ecuador, win a second-round knockout over Frank Newton in December of 1994. And then on April 29th, 1995, we've talked about this bout many times, Simon Brown would walk in the ring against Vincent Petway for the IBF Super Welterweight Championship. And, of course, that was a Beltway brawl. We talked about the card itself. We talked about the fight itself, one of the greatest fights of all time. We all know that Vincent Petway did knock out Simon Brown in the sixth round. And, boy, that was a tough knockout again. If you've never seen that, you kind of need to see it because, again, Simon had one of the wildest reactions that we've ever seen in a knockout situation. He had a tremendous tremendous knockout against Vincent Petway. Knockout loss against Vincent Petway that night. That was April 29th, 1995. He would go back in the ring. He'd get back in the ring in September 1995, September 16th, 1995 in Atlantic City, and lose a 10-round unanimous decision to another former world champion, Aaron Superman Davis. He bounced back, win a first-round knockout back in Kingston, Jamaica on March 15th, 1996 against Mike Bryan. He'd win a 10-round unanimous decision in June 18th, 1996 in Edison, I believe that's New Jersey, in a 10-round unanimous decision over Glenwood, the Real Beast Brown. He'd knock him out, and that would set him up for another world title. This would be in the middleweight division, as he would take on Lonnie Bradley in Reading, Pennsylvania on August 30th, 1996, and Simon would lose a 12-round unanimous decision. David Mendez would come next in April of 1997, Tropicana Hotel, and he would score Brown would score a 7th-round knockout in that bout. And then the last time that Simon Brown would fight in the Beltway took place on September 12th, 1997 at the Pikesville National Guard Armory in Pikesville, Maryland. And we talked about this bout as well. How Simon Brown took on a young up-and-coming boxer by the name of Ruben Ratman Bell, whose only loss at that time was to Paul Vaden, and the possibility in the bout that could have meant a world championship bout against Vincent Petway. But he would face Simon Brown, and it was actually be Simon Brown's last victory as a pro, as he would score a 5th-round stoppage over Ruben Bell. Bell had to retire after the 5th round. They claimed a broken hand. Both fighters got knocked down in the bout, and Ruben Bell would later understand that he would have cancer, and that would and ultimately he would end up being killed at the Washington Hospital Center. He was shot and killed there. And we're going to talk more about that incident as well, because we have a couple of anniversaries coming up as far as passages that took place. And there were 3 that really affected me in my career, and that was one of them. Ruben Bell's killing, murder was one of those. But Simon Brown would win that bout on September 12th, 1997. That would be his last win. Now, his last 6 bouts, he loses last 6 bouts. Number of them were for big-time boxers. Of course, he lose to Bernard Hopkins in January 31st, 1998, in Atlantic City, New Jersey, Trump Taj Mahal. He would lose a 6-round TKO for the IBF middleweight championship. He would lose to another world champion, not for a title bout, but it was a world champion by the name of David Reed out of Philadelphia, June 27, 1998. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, he lose by 4th-round TKO. He lose a 12-round bout to Corino Garcia, who was a veteran out of Mexico. 12-round unanimous decision there. That was for the WBC International Super Welterweight title. He'd lose to Kenny Lopez by 10-round split decision in Reno, Nevada in July of 1999. In October of 1999, he'd lose to Mads Larsson I believe that was in Finland in the 5th-round stoppage. And then his final bout would be on January 8th, 2000 against another former world champion, Omar Shika. And that was an 8-round unanimous decision loss to Omar Shika. So Simon Brown's final record was 47-12 with 34 knockouts to his credit. He had a record of 11-5 with 8 KOs in world title bouts. And I think this is why he may not be in the Hall of Fame. He only had a record of 4-8 with just 3 KOs against former world champions. Sometimes you got to beat the best. And I think this may be the biggest thing against him. Although he was 11-5 in world title fights, 8 KOs, and he won 3 world titles. But I really do believe that that he lost to some great boxers, legendary boxers. Some of them were already in the Hall of Fame. I think this is why he's not in the Hall of Fame. He did win bouts against Jorge Vaca, Luis Santana, of course, the great bout against Maurice Blocker, and the equally great bout against Terry Norris, the upset of the year in 1993. But he lost to Marlon Starling, Buddy McGirt, Terry Norris, Vincent Petway, Aaron Davis, Lonnie Bradley, Bernard Hopkins, and David Reed. All of them were former world champions. And I think that may be the stumbling block for a lot of people as to why Simon Brown's not in the IBF Hall of Fame. I think he had a great career. I think the 3 world championships should put him in there. The knockout win, the upset of the year against Terry Norris should put him in. And he fought the best of the best and was always active. He was always defending his title numerous times, his IBF title especially numerous times, IBF welterweight title. So I believe he should be in there. Of course, I'm biased because he's from the area, but I can see why he's not there. And I think the fact that he lost so many times, he just beaten maybe a Bernard Hopkins or maybe a Aaron Davis or maybe a Vincent Beltway. If he had beaten some of those guys and turned that record around, I really do believe that he might be in the Hall of Fame. But as of now, he's not. He did go into the DC Boxing Hall of Fame this past year. And so right now he's doing very well for himself. He spent some time on the West Coast, and I remember he wasn't doing all that well, and I believe it was Jerry Cooney's fist program that helped him out of that jam. But now he's back in this area. He's in the Beltway area. He's over in Germantown, Mount Airy, Maryland, and he has the Simon Brown Boxing Academy. And one of the boxers he has, one of the really good boxers he has, is the sexy Albanian Yank Plana. He's trained him since the amateurs. He trains him now as a pro, and Plana's only lost one time as a pro. So he's doing very well. I do talk to him. I have talked to him. He is doing very well and loves what he's doing as far as training amateur and pro boxers. So that's our tribute to Simon Montekia Brown, a legendary boxer, and indeed the first Beltway boxer I covered as a world champion. Without ado, for another edition of Beltway Boxing and the Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network. Of course, we'll be back next week. Hopefully have some updates on some events that'll take place for Beltway boxers, and we hope to have another tribute as well. The Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network brought to you by Real Time Pain Relief. You go to freepainoffer.com, buy $10 worth of Real Time Pain Relief. You get a free $10 tube of Real Time Pain Relief. The pain relief now endorsed by Big George Foreman, so try his knockout formula. Rub it on, the pain is gone in real time. And by DeborahSpears.com. Great weight loss tips, great jewelry, and great training methods at Deborah, Debra Spears.com. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Gary Digital Williams. Reminding you as always, keep supporting the best boxing in the world. The boxing along the Beltway. Thanks for listening. Take care.